A very good morning, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. We start with peace. Assalamu alaikum. Because we all struggle for peace. And peace is the main objective. Mr. Kim Solomon, Secretary General, moderator, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity on behalf of Palestine and Palestinians to come and update you, address you, brief you on situation in Palestine. I'm here while our Palestinian people continue to bleed, continue to suffer, continue to pay the bill. Although we have been struggling for more than 7.5 decades, and we have been victims of double standards. International community failed to treat us fairly, equally. When it comes to Palestine, in many occasions, international community unfortunately decide to be blind and deaf. We as Palestinians believe that war is not a solution. Violence is not a solution. Our struggle with Israel continued, as I said, for 7.5 decades. We tried to get rid of Israelis, and they are trying to get rid of us. We failed, and they are failing. This piece of land, regardless what they call it, Israel, and we believe that it's Palestine, the only solution is to accommodate both of us. We couldn't get rid of Israelis, and they are failing to get rid of us, and they will never succeed to get rid of Palestinians. The international community has to force Israel to accept what we agreed on, which is the two-state solution, because it's the only solution which can allow Palestinians and Israelis to exercise freedom and to enjoy freedom. And before I start my speech, allow me just to go through a presentation to explain to you exactly when we say Palestinians, what do we mean by Palestinians? Because in Thailand, Thai only hold a passport from Thailand. In America, Americans only can hold an American passport. In Malaysia, Malaysians only hold a Malaysian passport. In any of the Arab countries, they have their own passports. We in Palestine are exceptional and a very special nation. What do I mean by this? If we can start with the first slide. It's with me, right? This is Palestine. If we go back to 1947, with the United Nations partition plan, when they decided to have a two states on this territory, the yellow color supposed to be Israel and the green color supposed to be Palestine. So since 1947, when Israel was created, the struggle started. If you see these four maps, the first one on the left, that's how Palestinians used to live in Palestine on the green color, and Jews were living in Palestine on the white spots, but they were treated equally and fairly, and they lived in peace. Even if you go back to the Palestinian coin, 3 languages were printed on it: Hebrew, Arabic, and English. Jews enjoyed peace with Palestinians before the creation of Israel. Second map with the partition, as I said earlier, green color became, or supposed to be, for Palestine, and the white color for Israel. And then the land started to shrink by the Israeli measures and the Israeli settlements up to 1967, when we had the West Bank and Gaza, and they were separated. There were no geographical link between Gaza and between the West Bank. And ended up with the latest map, as you see, the fourth one, where Palestine shrinked because it is being killed by the Israeli illegal settlements all over the West Bank, and they maintained no geographical link with Gaza, between Gaza and the West Bank. When we talk about Palestinians, let me just make it clear to you all that we do have 4 categories. Category number 1, we have about 3 million Palestinians living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And we have about 2.5 million Palestinians living in Gaza Strip. And we have 1.5 million Palestinians remained in historical Palestine, and they were forced to take the Israeli citizenship, and they are Israeli citizens living in Israel, and they are represented in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. They vote in Israel, and they hold the Israeli citizenship. And we come to 7.5 million Palestinians living in diaspora. And they are not eligible to go back to Palestine, although UN resolutions guaranteed the right of return for these Palestinians, but resolutions never been implemented. If a Jew in Argentina or in Brazil or in any Latin American country or in Russia is eligible to go and live in Israel, why 7.5 million Palestinians are not eligible to go back and live in Palestine? So the 4 categories: category number 1 of Palestinians living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, suffering of the Israeli occupation, the Israeli attacks of the Israeli settlers, the Israeli blockades. On daily basis, cities, towns, refugee camps in the West Bank are invaded by the Israeli army, the Israeli settler, and the Israeli police. Palestinians arrested, Palestinians shot dead. Even this morning, Jenin was invaded and put under blockade. So it's not only Gaza was being under the Israeli attack. West Bank and West Banker are the same. Israeli measures are targeting all Palestinians, regardless where they are. The 1.5 million Palestinians in Israel are struggling for equality because they are treated as second-class citizens in Israel. They are not treated equally as they're supposed to be. And the 2.5 million Palestinians in Gaza who have been suffering the siege for more than 16 years. An international community witnessed their suffering for almost 2 decades. The very basic humanitarian needs never reach Gaza without being facilitated and coordinated by the Israeli authorities. So the 2.5 million Palestinians in Gaza are suffering the siege. And unfortunately, international community failed to lift up the siege on Gaza. So when people now talk about the 7th of October, those who believe that history started on the 7th of October, which is totally wrong. The struggle is 7.5 decades. So you have to look through the root of the problem, not just on the 7th of October for the last 3 months where people are suffering. People in Palestine have been suffering for more than 7.5 decades. Traveling from and to Palestine. Since Palestine and all Palestine, Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem are under occupation, so borders are controlled by the Israeli authorities. Even when we talk about Rafah crossing point to Gaza, there is a special treaty between Egyptian authorities and the Israeli authorities to facilitate the move in and out of Gaza through the Rafah crossing point. So many people ask the question now, why can't humanitarian aids be sent directly through Egypt to Gaza? Because there is a special treaty for Rafah crossing point that Egyptian authorities are respecting. So if they have to facilitate humanitarian aids to Gaza, it has to get the security clearance by the Israeli authorities. And of course, now Israeli authorities are delaying, facilitating the very basic humanitarian aids for Gaza. For those who are in the West Bank, the only crossing point is through King Hussein Bridge with Jordan. So West Bankers, if they have to travel in and out of Palestine, they have to go through Jordan. 2.5 million Palestinians in Gaza, to travel in and out of Gaza, it has to be through the Rafah crossing point. Of course, there are some crossing points with Israel, and that's up to rules and regulations of the Israeli authorities. This is in front of you is the Rafah crossing point, which allow Palestinians in Gaza to go in and out and to facilitate the movement of Palestinians through the Egyptian territories to Gaza. At the moment, of course, it's closed and it's only allowed through to facilitate a minimum humanitarian aids via this crossing point with the Egyptian territories. This is the King Hussein crossing point with the West Bank, where Palestinians who are living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, if they need to move in and out of the Palestinian territories, although they go through the Israeli checking points, but through Jordan is the only way that they can travel in and out of Palestinian territories. As I mentioned earlier, of course, there is no geographical link between Gaza and the West Bank. And that's why we insist as Palestinians for any future peace agreement, it must guarantee a geographical link between Gaza and the West Bank, because as our leadership stated clearly, there is no Palestinian state in Gaza, and there is no Palestinian state without Gaza. Gaza, West Bank, and East Jerusalem is a one unit. Any solution, any peace solution in the future, without considering this, will never succeed. Of course, the very complicated matter, who are the Palestinians? We have those Palestinians who are living in Palestine and they hold the Palestinian ID, which make them eligible to go in and out of Palestine. They are issued with a Palestinian passport as per Oslo Agreement. This passport allows them to travel in and out of Palestine if they hold the ID, the Palestinian ID. Without that, Israelis will never allow them to go into Palestine. So we come to the second category, which is 7.5 million Palestinians who have no Palestinian ID. We issue them with a Palestinian passport with no ID number. This is a diplomatic Palestinian passport that I hold personally. This passport have an ID, so I'm eligible to travel in and out because I hold the ID. But my first secretary in the embassy holds the same passport but with no ID, so he can't travel in and out because he's not eligible as per the rules and regulations of the occupier. He can't go to Palestine since he has no ID. So we have the first passport example of those who hold the ID, and the second one without an ID. We come to the normal Palestinian passports for normal citizens, the same thing. If you have an ID, then you are eligible to go in and out into Palestine. If you don't have an ID, you have the passport which allow you to travel all around the world except to Palestine. You can't go. We come to Palestinians holding Jordanian passport. They are Palestinians by origin, but they are Jordanian citizens. They are living in Jordan. We have about 3 million Palestinians living in Jordan. And they are struggling for the right of return. Because, as I said earlier, if a Jew is eligible to go back and live in Israel when he wants and where he wants, then why Palestinians can't enjoy this right the same? A second travel document given to Palestinians by the Jordanian Authority, and it's given to Jordanian refugees. So it's different between those Palestinians who have the Jordanian ID number and those Palestinians living in Jordan without an Jordanian ID number. And it goes on. This is an Egyptian travel document given to Palestinians from Gaza because they do not have a Palestinian passport, so they choose to have the Egyptian travel document. This is a Lebanese travel document for Palestinians living in Lebanon, and it's issued to Palestinian refugees in Lebanon. This is an Iraqi. We have Yemeni. We have Libyan. That's where, when I said Palestinians are special and exceptional. And if you come to immigration in Thailand, or immigration in Malaysia, or in any other country around the world, and you show them these travel documents, if they are not experienced to understand it, then they find it very strange. And it's difficult to understand. Because Palestinians should have a Palestinian passport, and that's it. But why should Palestinians have so many types of passports or travel documents? Just because we are exceptional, just because we are under occupation, just because we are struggling to enjoy our independence, to enjoy our freedom, to live similar to any other nation around the globe, where we can exercise our freedom and exercise our rights the same as any other nation. This introduction I gave to you just to enable you understand the suffering of the Palestinians. We are a very special case just because, I'm not saying this just to win your sympathy, to sympathize with Palestinians. This very complicated issue in the Middle East, without putting an end to this suffering, neither the Israelis or the Palestinians will never enjoy peace. For these peace supporters, for those who believe on peace, they must look into the root of the struggle. Israelis tried peace treaty with Egypt 50 years ago in Camp David. If you go to Egypt and you ask any Egyptian, they never felt peace because peace was signed between two governments. Peace never reached the two nations. Same thing, peace treaty with Jordan. Late King Hussein signed a peace treaty with the Israeli government. Go to Amman. After the 7th of October, the biggest demonstration was in Amman because Jordanian never felt peace with Israel, although there is a peace treaty between the Jordanian government and the Israeli government. Israelis, the American administration, the Quartet, United Nations, international community know very well that the core issue of any settlement in the Middle East is the Palestinian and Israeli cause. Israel could normalize diplomatic relations with all Arab and Muslim countries without the Israelis recognizing the Palestinian rights in an independent Palestinian state where Palestinians can exercise their freedom. They will never live in peace and they will never enjoy peace. Peace is the solution. Violence and war is not the solution. Israelis must understand that we, as the legitimate representative of Palestine and Palestinians, accepted the two-state solution, accepted to live side by side with Israel, accepted to exercise and enjoy peace, which is the only solution. Extremism and violence, no one will win. Israelis been striking Gaza for the last 3 months. What did they achieve? If I can just share with you and update you on the latest figures, up to 23,000 Palestinians being killed since the 7th of October up until now. Around 60,000 injured. Hospitals were targeted. Mosques were targeted. Churches were targeted. Schools. UNRWA schools, since we are in the United Nations building, Palestinians believe that UNRWA schools could be a safe haven. And they were targeted and struck by the Israelis. And the Israeli propaganda trying to convince the international community that they are countering Hamas. Out of those 23,000 who were killed in Gaza, how many of them are Hamas? 7,000 women, more than 10,000 children below 12 years old. Are they Hamas? When they strike 3 churches in Gaza, the oldest hospital, Ahli Hospital, Ma'madani Hospital in Gaza, which was a charity, a Christian hospital, one of the oldest hospitals in Gaza, which was targeted. Christian community in Gaza is a very small community, less than 100. 16 Christians were targeted and killed in Gaza. Are they Hamas? Peace campaign in Israel. We believed in one stage that we have partners for peace. Unfortunately, it has been shrinking. And even at the moment, hardly you can find somebody who can talk about peace. The international community is responsible to put an end to the suffering, to unfairness, and to look through 2 eyes, and to avoid the double standards, and to implement UN resolutions. When South Africa decided to go to ICC, just because they witnessed the suffering of Palestinians and those who are supporting South Africa, which we, from our perspective as Palestinians, highly appreciate this initiative. But for your knowledge as well, in Malaysia, there's an NGO called My Aqsa who sponsored the same case at The Hague against Israel. And they witnessed all evidences collected from Al-Quds, from Wad al-Hummus, from Al-Isawiyah, from Gaza, from Hebron. And they have a session at The Hague. All in all, let me conclude, and I'll open the floor for Q&A. What is most immediate needs at the moment? To have an unconditional, immediate ceasefire to stop the suffering of those Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in East Jerusalem. Second, to ensure a humanitarian corridor to enable the very basic needs for those who are homeless in Gaza. 1.9 million out of the 2.5 million are suffering. They were forced to evacuate north of Gaza to south of Gaza. And even when they reach south of Gaza, they become homeless. And it's winter with the very cold weather, and they are in need of the very basics: drinking water, medicine, food, a tent, a shelter, to ensure that they are at least temporarily, they are accommodated with the very basic needs they need. And the third immediate need, it's the responsibility of the international community to give hope to Palestinians through a political process to enable Palestinians and Israelis to go back to the negotiation table and to agree to finalize and put an end to this suffering, to enable both Israelis and Palestinians to enjoy peace and live in peace. Thank you very much.